Chauvin's defense attorney right now as jury selection in the trial for Derek Chauvin is about to get underway in its second week. You heard our team at Fox 9 Minneapolis say that they have about half the jury selected, so it will continue to get underway here in just a couple of minutes. We believe around 10 a.m. Eastern time. Right now, these motions are kind of just to set the ground rules of what we can expect today and in the weeks ahead. But I do want to switch gears here because we are continuing to bring you all of the top stories and headlines happening across the country this morning. The latest on Governor Andrew Cuomo's sexual harassment scandal is growing as President Biden finally addressed this scandal yesterday. So joining me right now is Fox's Bryan Llenas. He is in Brooklyn, New York, covering the latest on Cuomo Scandal. So Bryan, good morning to you. President Biden addressed this yesterday to the media. So what exactly did he say?
Well, frankly, he was asked a question while he was on the White House lawn, yelled at him essentially, do you have anything to say about the Cuomo investigation? And he said essentially that the investigation needs to be completed, that the investigation is underway and we'll see. That is a line that is being echoed by the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who said also over the weekend that Governor Andrew Cuomo should look within himself and decide whether or not he can effectively lead, stopping short of saying that he should resign. But again, that is coming off of the heels of nearly the entire New York State congressional delegation calling on Governor Cuomo to step down over the last 3 days. You also have the majority of New York State lawmakers, 135 at least, according to the Fox News count, who are also calling for his resignation or impeachment. So what you have right now is Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is cornered. He was seen making phone calls outside of the executive mansion in Albany. He looked beleaguered. He appeared to be beleaguered. I mean, making calls here, I guess, seemingly trying to find some support out there in a world right now where, in terms of the political world, he doesn't seem to have much of it.
Now, Bryan, you and I spoke a little bit before this live interview here, and you told me that now there are reports of Cuomo using vaccine distribution to kind of secure support amid this scandal. Can you kind of explain?
So the Washington Post and the New York Times are both reporting that the New York State vaccine czar Larry Schwartz made a few calls over the last 2 weeks to county executives. And in those calls, he questioned executives over their loyalty to Governor Andrew Cuomo. And at least one county executive who was not named told the Washington Post that at the very least this was inappropriate and it could be unethical. And apparently one county executive has filed an ethics complaint because they feared that somehow, depending on what they said to Larry Schwartz, that their vaccine supply could suffer as a result. I mean, it's a serious allegation. Beth Garvey, who is the acting counsel for the governor, released a statement and said that this is simply not true. Larry Schwartz told the papers that this is not true, denied that there was any sort of ethical violation here. But you can see here it goes in line with this idea that the governor is trying to find some loyalty, some supporters. And there have been a lot of reports over the weekend. The New York Times as well as New York Magazine, both reporting extensively about this idea that the governor has ruled New York pretty much with an iron fist. This is somebody that behind the scenes has, quote, bullied and has been has been tyrannical in some ways in how he has governed, according to dozens of aides who have spoken to both of those outlets on background about his style. So there is a theme here, and now all of a sudden when he needs support the most, he's having a tough time finding it, especially among his Democratic supporters and lawmakers who are supposed to be supporting him, but obviously right now are not.
Yeah, Bryan, going off of what you just said, who are the latest lawmakers, whether they're Democrat or Republicans, calling for Cuomo's resignation?
Well, I think the biggest ones are Senators Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer. These are obviously New York senators. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, both of them coming out late on Friday with a statement that said essentially that they don't believe that he can govern. He doesn't have the confidence of his governing partners, nor does he have the confidence of New Yorkers. And so they believe because of that he should resign. Remember, these two senators were the senators who were essentially echoing what Biden and Pelosi are saying, that they want the investigation to finish. Remember, there is an independent investigation underway right now by New York's Attorney General Letitia James. She has hired a private independent law firm and 2 lead investigators who are looking into these sexual misconduct allegations. But there's also an impeachment investigation underway in the New York State Assembly, which is looking into those allegations of sexual misconduct and also the nursing home scandal. Again, his administration reportedly under an FBI investigation over whether or not they purposely withheld death data from the state's nursing homes. And also there's questions about whether or not the state and the governor underreported, based on all the reporting that we've seen, that they underreported the number of deaths for political purposes. So there's a lot going on, and Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer were the last 2 shoes to drop here. We'll see what happens. A little bit surprising, I think, given all the support against the Governor Cuomo, that both Biden and Pelosi have not outright called for his resignation and are sticking by the line that the investigation should continue.
Yeah, and Bryan, my last question to you is the fact that we heard from Governor Andrew Cuomo on Friday. It was actually just an audio call. So what were the key points of his claims and what he was saying? Again, he refused to resign. What stood out to you in his latest address to this situation?
He's digging himself continuously into his hole. He has dug himself into his position that he will not resign. It was surprising, despite, he had this telephone press conference as more and more members, at least a dozen members of the New York's congressional delegation, came out and spoke against him and called out for his resignation. He then held this telephone news conference in which he said he will not resign. He again said that he was sorry if he made anybody feel uncomfortable, that he had not sexually harassed anybody, not sexually assaulted anyone, and he continued to dig himself into that defensive positioning, which is an interesting place for him to be, considering all of the backlash. And I think, given his position that day, and I mean especially what he said about cancel culture, that he was somehow now a victim of cancel culture and not part of the political class, which again, you have to remember, I mean, this is somebody who was the son of Governor Mario Cuomo, who was a 3-term governor of New York, and somebody who was married, who was with a Kennedy, and somebody who has been lauded by the political class and worked for President Bill Clinton. So for him to blame cancel culture was also a big surprise. And then he also went after politicians, saying that any politicians who would call for his resignation right now are reckless, and it's dangerous for them to opine on his situation without the facts. But in 2018, frankly, Governor Cuomo did the exact same thing with then Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, called for Schneiderman's resignation, and his only facts at that moment were a New Yorker magazine article that had 4 allegations of sexual assault against the then Attorney General. So a lot of people are calling out the hypocrisy of the situation, but based on his telephone news conference, it does not seem that this governor will resign unless he believes he's going to be impeached.
Yeah, all really important points there, Bryan. Well, we thank you so much for joining us here on News Now from Fox. We're curious to see how this will continue to play out.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And a huge thank you to Bryan and our Fox News team for joining us live with these updates. The Cuomo scandal gaining lots of attention. And as you heard him say, they are not only worried about how that will play out, but they are also worried about how the allegations of him misreporting nursing home facts will play out as well. A lot of people not wanting to forget about that, because obviously we are still very much in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. Taking a live